Good morning, Year 13. Students who are due to sit exams this summer, i.e. you, will receive grades determined by your teachers. Following the cancellation of this year's summer exams, the Department for Education and Ofqual have launched a consultation seeking views on how to award grades in a way that reflects students' performance accurately, recognising the disruption that they have faced this year. Grades will be based on teacher assessment, with teachers supported in making decisions with guidance and training from exam boards. The consultation will consider the range of evidence teachers use to award a grade, which could include coursework, other forms of assessment and papers provided by exam boards to support consistency and fairness across schools and colleges. The proposals ensure you are given the opportunity to demonstrate the standard at which you can perform and incentivise you to continue learning throughout the rest of the academic year. The consultation will also seek views on results being issued to students earlier than usual to allow enough time for appeals to be processed ahead of the start of the new term. The government have been clear that while cancelling exams was a last resort, it remains committed to ensuring that students receive a grade that reflects their hard work throughout the year and supports them to progress through their careers. We know that this is a lot to take in, and the disruption and interruptions to your learning have been difficult. We want you to know that we will be taking every step to safeguard your education and provide you with the best possible outcomes. In order to do this, we want you to focus on the things that you can do, rather than the things you can't. We want to encourage you to look for solutions, rather than stop every time you come across a barrier. Problem solving, navigating challenging situations, and keeping an open mind are all strategies that will not only help you through these difficult times, but will prove vital as you move through life. This is our focus for today's presentation. So let's get straight to it. How did your mock exams go last term? How did you prepare for the exams? What kinds of errors did you make on the exams? And what could you do differently next time? It's important for you to answer these questions in order to maximise the opportunity that this learning moment provides you. What is your perception of your knowledge before the exams and now? How prepared were you before the exams? And how many hours did you spend preparing for the exams? Reflecting on your performance enables you to develop self-regulation skills. Self-regulation encompasses self-assessment, finding the cause and effect relationship between effort and performance, identifying more effective study strategies, goal setting, goal implementation, and monitoring progress. All are necessary for you to advance from this learning landmark in a precise and productive way. Today we want you to focus on moving your learning forwards in a clear and efficient way. So which of these statements best describe you in relation to these categories, such as specific subjects, assessment objectives, exam technique, Bloom skills, and particular exam papers? I'm either good at it or I'm not and I can do better. I'm envious of other people's success, or if someone else can do it, so can I. Failure is the limit of my abilities, or failure is an opportunity to improve. When I'm frustrated, I give up. Or when I'm frustrated, I keep going. That's just who I am. I can't change it. Or I don't mind trying new things. I don't want to hear your feedback. Or I actively seek feedback, both positive and negative. It's quite likely that you'll jump from one list to the other depending on the situation. For example, if I were to be faced with writing an essay in an English literature exam, I would almost certainly veer towards the statements on the left. However, completing a practical assessment in PE, I'd probably feel that these statements on the right reflect my thoughts. These statements are examples of a growth and fixed mindset, and it's important to understand how they might present themselves to you in order to reap the benefits of a growth mindset and move away from an unhelpful fixed mindset. It would actually be more useful for me to develop a growth mindset in my essay writing skills by learning to harness whatever it is that I have been successful at in my mindset for my PE practical assessment.
Growth mindset is a theory about how people view their intelligence and their abilities, and it revolves around the belief that it is malleable and as such can be developed and improved. The opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset, which refers to the belief that a person's talent is set in stone. And it turns out that how we view our abilities can have a big impact on how we think, feel, and behave. Research suggests that those with a growth mindset seek out better feedback and persist for longer, cope better with transitions and develop better self-regulation, have less stress and aggression, as well as increasing well-being and emotional control, have higher self-esteem, better learning orientation, and it helps reduce helplessness.
Carol Dweck is an American psychologist and is a professor of psychology at Stanford University. She is known for her work on the mindset psychological trait and goes on to say, in a fixed mindset, students believe that their basic abilities, their intelligence, their talents are just fixed traits. They have a certain amount and that's that, and then their goal becomes to look smart all the time and never look dumb. In a growth mindset, students understand that their talents and abilities can be developed through effort, good teaching, and persistence. They don't necessarily believe that everyone's the same or that everyone can be Einstein, but they believe that everyone can get smarter if they work at it. We need to move on quickly from this abstract concept and turn it into something concrete for you to act upon. It is of great consequence to you, and it is important for you to understand where we are asking you to look at yourselves in order for you to move your learning forwards from the point that you are at now. If you are struggling with writing to persuade, what steps can you take to improve? If you are finding it hard to factorize algebraic expressions, what can you do to build confidence and make the conceptual leap needed? If you are still not using verb endings correctly, what practice can you do that will allow you to gain the fluency that you need? If you still feel that you can't draw for toffee, what can you do using the knowledge and skills that you've got to move forward, gain confidence, and feel successful? If you don't seem to understand what happened in Russia, despite being in the lessons, what learning strategies can you work hard at in order to secure the knowledge that you need? All of these things link to feedback that actually helps you move forward. Feedback that focuses on things that you can actually do. Your mock exams should have provided you with some real, hard evidence, results, and feedback on your progress and performance. You are now in the feedback phase, so what is it that you actually need to do? Are you completing the appropriate feedback? Number 1. Redraft or redo. Redrafting is very powerful provided that the actions are very specific and the scale of the task is manageable, i.e. redraft this piece of work, this paragraph, this graph, by doing X, by adding Y, by correcting Z. Or redo this piece of work, but this time make sure that you include X, that you measure Y, that you state Z correctly. Number 2. Rehearse or repeat. As any musician will know, the feedback from most instrumental lessons is to practice something specific. Some scales, sections of the piece, some finger exercises, a performance, each time paying attention to some very particular skill element for additional fluency. This works for many subjects. For example, in maths, practice your number bonds to 100 with these questions. Or practice factorizing basic common expressions by doing these questions. In French or English, you could practice writing certain types of sentences. Rehearse your use of future tense or dialogue markers or fronted adverbials or connectives by rewriting these 20 statements, adding the appropriate phrase or punctuation or anything that could be done repeatedly. 3. Revisit and respond. This could mean going back over fundamentals or being given extension questions. Instead of a commentary on what you have done before, complete new questions informed by your test performances. This replaces a focus on retrospective marking with a proactive forward-looking approach of issuing questions. Number 4. Relearn and retest. This is very simply a case of specifying a set of knowledge and returning to the routines of retrieval practice. You may need to revisit previous learning too, but mainly it is a case of self-quizzing repeatedly using a variety of memory techniques to ensure that certain ideas, words, equations, facts, details or quotations are learned. It's a very specific form of feedback. You still don't know all of these facts? Go and learn them, prepare for a mini test. Number 5. Research and record. You may have some issues with the scope of your exposure to ideas and are showing that the need to show deeper insight, wider references or more imagination. The solution to this could be more reading or more research of a different kind. However, the instruction to simply do more research could be horribly unproductive or lead down too many blind alleys. You need to be specific with what reading and what research you should do, as well as record your findings.
The learning process doesn't change as you get older. Just the skills and content become more advanced. The cycle of encoding, storing, and retrieving information remains the same. Encoding memory requires you to commit learning into your long-term memory by making the content meaningful. Mnemonics and chunking are effective learning methods of doing this, as they will help reduce memory load. The brain retains memories to storage permanently, based on importance and duration. So techniques such as immersion and time to overlearn can be helpful. And finally, retrieval of memory is the act of remembering information stored in the long-term memory. Effortful retrieval, spaced learning, and mixed practice are all proven to help this process. With time, clarity, critique, and support, you'll be capable of much more than you imagine. We'd like you to watch this short video on the story of Austin's butterfly. It's a true story about a first grade boy in America whose task was to draw a butterfly. Remember, the learning process doesn't change from when you were in reception to now in Year 13.
This is a story called Austin's Butterfly, and it's a true story about a first grade boy, and his name is Austin. His job in first grade was to draw a butterfly, and this is the butterfly that he picked. Austin had to use this photograph as his model, and he had to draw an accurate scientific drawing of this butterfly. This is called a tiger swallowtail.
I knew it!
But remember, Austin was only in first grade. And you know what he did? He forgot to look like a scientist carefully. He got his paper and he just started to draw the image of a butterfly that he had in his head. And he wasn't looking like a scientist, and so this is what he drew.
Whoa.
It's not bad, and it is a butterfly, but does it look exactly like this?
No.
No, it doesn't yet. It doesn't look exactly like this yet. And you know what Austin said? He said, okay, I'll go try. And he went back to his seat and he drew this.
Wow.
Does this look more like a triangle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he go out further, like Atak was suggesting?
Yes. Yeah.
Did he add some jaggedness here,
Yes.
like Cindy? Did he get rid of that bottom thing?
Yes.
So he did listen to his friends and he made it better. It's not perfect. He listened to his friends and they said, this is really a lot better, Austin. That second draft really is better.
Yeah, maybe you can make a third one.
Good, maybe he could make a third draft. And so he did this draft. What do you notice there?
Well, one wing's more pointed than the other, and that side is a little bit higher than the others.
Good. Coburn?
Right here, it doesn't have the inside thing still.
Ah, okay. Needs a little bit more of that notch. So, do you think maybe he should do a fourth draft?
Yeah.
Well, that's just what he said. He said, shoot, okay, I got round again. I'll go back and do a fourth draft.
Listen.
He listened. Does it look more even like Elijah was suggesting?
Yes.
Yeah, and does it look like it's coming out a little sharper, like
Yes.
Cindy was suggesting? And like Atak was saying, it's a little, the angle looks a little better. So now Austin was feeling really good. He said, am I ready to add some pattern? And they said, okay, why don't you try adding some of the pattern? And he did.
He's good at it.
He is so good.
And then they said, Austin, you're ready for color.
Really?
Let's look at his last draft.
Wow.
And what do you think? Did it come out really good?
Yeah.
What do you think about how much progress he made? And Tak, what would you say about his progress?
He made like a lot of progress. He persevered doing it. His friends were honest with him.
What was it about the kinds of advice that they gave that allowed him to get better each time? Hassan?
Well, they told him what was wrong about it.
Did they say it's just wrong, or were they more specific than that?
They were more specific, but they weren't mean about it.
Good. He used the eyes of a scientist. Great.
There are a lot of things to take from this video. The nature of effective critique. Most obviously, the teacher is showing that critique that is kind, helpful and very specific, focused on a well-defined outcome, is immensely powerful. He's also showing that children can learn to do this. Austin improved his butterfly based on feedback from his peers. The value of redrafting. Imagine if the teacher had just left it at 1 draft, or even 3rd draft. There was more to come from Austin, but he could have been allowed to stop short, to move on to something else before he'd fully explored this particular process. How often do you do that? I'd suggest that too often teachers accept work from students that is mediocre, that falls short of your best. Austin found out that he could draw a superb butterfly. The teacher found out that he could too, because he was given time and space to continually improve. In fact, he went back a bit in order to move forwards. That was part of the process. Obviously, with that experience or real success, you'd hope he could achieve a higher standard with fewer drafts in his next effort. The growth mindset aspect. The thing that strikes me most about this video is the contrast between Austin's first and last drafts, and the way that changes your perception of this unknown first grader. Presented with the first draft, you might think that was what Austin could do. That was him. Presented with the final draft, you'd think he was a very much more talented young boy. But it is the same boy. The final draft was always in him. It just needed to find a way out, with some help from his friends and his teachers. So what stands in your way? There are 3 elements to getting you to the point where you experience the study process positively: motivation, strategy, and habit. Put together, these elements lead to success, and it is through engineering success that the time and effort pays off and the learning is within your control. Motivation. The "you can take a horse to water" scenario is all too familiar. Even when we've laid it all out for students, sometimes they're just not prepared to make the sustained effort required to really learn things deeply, to practice frequently enough so that they gain the fluency they need. But what is your motivation? I'm sure you have long-term goals of uni or grades or a career, but that's not what you're thinking about while studying at the kitchen table. Be motivated by your confidence that in a short cycle study process, your effort will lead to learning. Strategy. The missing ingredient for many students is simply knowing how to study independently, how to go about the process of filling in knowledge gaps, how to break down a difficult process into the steps that can be taken with a degree of success to build confidence. How often does this happen? When I'm at home, I feel I waste a lot of time wondering what I'm supposed to do. In other words, despite setting aside the time to study and having the motivation to do well, you do not have a clear idea of how to go about it. Knowing which retrieval practice or self-assessment method you should apply is your strategy. This is where metacognition and modelling are so important. You should be narrating your thinking as you problem solve. Through modelling and careful shifts from guided to independent practice, your teachers are helping you get the hang of good learning strategies that you should then be using independently. And habit. Studying needs to be a habit. Habit needs routines, rhythms, and feedback loops that tell you if they're good habits or bad habits. High expectations for independent study needs to be built in and scaffolded at the earliest opportunity, ensuring that study builds success and confidence. How are those habits formed? It starts by getting homework in on a regular basis and managing your time well by meeting deadlines. It's the need to commit X number of hours to your time to a piece of coursework and recognising that the more complex the topic, the longer it may take. All of this will help you to reap rewards that in turn fuel self-motivation. Putting it all together, you get a positive spiral of successful strategies feeding into good habits that then fuel motivation through increased level of fulfillment from meeting goals as a result of applying effort successfully. The trick is to find where you need to change if you're not succeeding. Start with strategies and then build into habits. The motivation will come.
So, we want you to think about applying the following strategies to your feedback from your mock exams. Don't just keep doing what you've always done without considering if it is effective. Number 1, self-questioning. Self-questioning involves pausing throughout a task to consciously check your own actions. Without self-questioning, we may lack humility and awareness of our own faults. Most importantly, we would not be able to improve because we never took the time to ask ourselves important questions like, is this the best way to carry out the task? Did I miss something? Maybe I should check again. Did I follow the right procedure there? How could I do better next time? Am I looking at this task the right way? How can I do a better job at thinking about what I'm doing? Good students question their actions both while they're completing the task and after finishing it. 2. Awareness of strengths and weaknesses. Central to metacognition is a person's capacity to see their own strengths and weaknesses. Only through looking at yourself and making a genuine assessment of your weaknesses can you achieve self-improvement. One way to start looking at your strengths and weaknesses is to use a SWOT chart. A SWOT chart is a chart with 4 sections. Strengths, write down what you perceive to be your strengths as a learner. Weaknesses, write down what you perceive to be your weaknesses as a learner. Opportunities, identify opportunities you may have to improve your cognitive skills in the coming weeks or months. Threats, identify potential threats that may prevent you from improving your cognitive skills in the coming weeks or months. Graphic organizers, also sometimes called cognitive tools, help us to consciously improve our thinking processes. They assist us in organizing our thoughts, creating connections between things we know, thinking more deeply about something, visualizing procedures and processes. Examples of graphic organizers include mind maps, flowcharts, and spider diagrams. The ideal graphic organizer will allow you to spill your thinking out onto a sheet or screen and shuffle and sort our thoughts to help you organize your minds better. By using a graphic organizer, we are more effectively thinking about our thinking. Four, regulation checklists. A regulation checklist can either be task-based or generalized. A task-based regulation checklist is usually created before a task begins. It will list the thought process required to succeed in the task, list the observable outcomes of higher order thinking linked to the task, list the checkpoints during the task where people should pause to reflect on their thinking. A general regulation checklist provides regulation strategies that can be used across any normal task, such as reminders to pause and reflect in practice at regular intervals, prompts to remind you to think about what strategies you are using and whether or not they are appropriate for the task, Self-questioning prompts to remind you to question your choices. Quick charts and questionnaires to help you focus on your developments. 5. Active reading strategies. Active reading strategies are strategies that ensure that you are concentrating while you read and actually comprehend the information. Examples of active reading strategies include underlining text, underline key or important bits of information to highlight their importance in your mind, using a ruler to read, placing a ruler under the sentence that you're reading to help you focus on that line. Scan for the main ideas. In informational texts, you can scan for the information that you need. Pay close attention to subheadings that give you a clue about where you will find the key information. My favourite approach to active reading is the reciprocal teaching approach. This approach emphasises 4 more strategies. Questioning. Ask yourself questions or ask your friends questions to check comprehension. Summarising. Try to sum up the page you just read in 1 or 2 sentences to check for comprehension before moving on. Predicting. Try to predict how a story will go by looking at the pictures on the cover. Clarifying. Ask for clarification from friends or a teacher when you don't understand, rather than just moving on. 6. Planning ahead. When we plan ahead, we often have to think about how we'll go about a task. We might call it our plan of attack. Planning ahead involves thinking about what we're going to do in order to complete a task. During your planning phase, you might make decisions such as deciding what strategies you'll use when your task, competition or activity begins. Tossing up a range of different thinking skills that you might use when approaching a task. Reminding yourself not to make the same mistakes that you did last time. Preparing some tools that will help you keep your thinking on track, such as preparing graphic organizers.
So what should you do now? Research has shown that putting this into action has enormous rewards and benefits in not just students' grades, but it prepares you for further education and the challenges of everyday life. We'd like you to complete a SWOT analysis of yourself. Get a blank piece of paper, divide it into 4 sections and place the headings strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats into each box. There are some examples here for you to prompt you to think about your personal situation. We've also shared with you the same set of questions that you were asked to consider at the end of your metacognition presentation in November. Make sure that you spend at least 10 to 15 minutes thinking carefully about your own situation. Be even more specific where possible. For example, which higher order skills from Bloom's taxonomy are strengths or weaknesses? You should be getting feedback from exam papers and teachers, etc. Which components of the fixed mindset earlier on in this presentation are more like you? Once you've done this, look at the other strategies in this presentation in more detail and decide which would be most effective for you to implement. You will effectively be setting and implementing some short-term goals in order to help you achieve your long-term goals. We want to finish off by offering you a final challenge. We know that there will be a good number of you out there who are thinking, what's the point of all this? There aren't going to be any exams, so this self-reflection and self-regulation business is just not necessary. To think like this at this particular time is a way of clearly demonstrating to yourself and others just how much of a fixed mindset you have, and to have totally missed the point about improvements that you can make to your own learning process. Why give up on yourself so soon and so easily? This is precisely the time that you should be looking to improve yourself, and who knows how such self-reflection and any subsequent change to how you approach work, learning, exam questions, etc. might impact you in terms of the grades you'll be finally awarded. Don't forget to look beyond A2 grades. Any self-reflection and self-regulation you carry out now will be helpful when you do finally get to university and further still during lifelong learning. If you're finding any of this difficult, please make sure you seek help and guidance from either the teaching and learning team, myself, Mr. Panton or Mr. Hampson, the Year 13 pastoral team or your form tutor. Thank you for listening.